Now, as the Russian invasion of Ukraine enters day 43, here's a quick look at all the top developments coming in from Ukraine and Russia. United States has now claimed that it has foiled a major cyber attack by Russian hackers before it could affect a large number of devices in the world. According to reports, the FBI has wrested control of thousands of routers and firewall appliances away from Russian military hackers. United States Senate will vote today to end normal trade relations with Russia and also to ban the importation of its oil. Both bills have been bogged down in the Senate. The trade suspension measure will pave way for US President Joe Biden to enact higher tariffs on certain Russian imports. The mayor of besieged port city of Mariupol has now claimed that more than 5,000 civilians have been killed so far. Ukrainian authorities have blamed Russia for targeting residential areas. Right, 43 days of this war, and we're looking at some of the areas of Ukraine now staying on high alert as they're expecting Russian onslaught in the next 3 to 4 days. To give us some clarity on that, let me quickly cut across to Rajesh Pawar joining us live from Kiev. We also have Gaurav Sawant from that combat zone giving us the factual details in the face of those hostilities. Rajesh, give us an understanding. We're looking at Ukraine now alleging that residents of eastern Ukraine should evacuate at the earliest along the regions of Kiev, Luhansk and Donetsk as they fear Russian onslaught along the regions in the next 4 days. How factual is this claim?
Look, Nabila, this is normal that when a country expects some kind of military offensive from the enemy in a particular area, it's a normal advisory to all the citizens to vacate that area because they do not want normal civilians to be caught in the crossfire between the two fighting forces. Having said that, let me tell you, fighting there has been going on since the beginning of the war, and it has seen some very intense phases, as reported by Geeta Mohan also in the past. So fighting has been going on. There is nothing new happening. Ukraine had earlier also said that the forces which have been removed from outside of Kiev and Chernihiv through Belarus are being rotated to east of Ukraine for a major offensive there. Probably these current allegations or current appreciation of situation by Ukrainian forces is in continuation with that appreciation which they made in the past when the Ukrainian forces left the outskirts of Kiev. Nabila.
Right, Rajesh, I'm going to come to you. If you could show us what's exactly behind you, but stay with us. I'm going to quickly shift focus to Gaurav Sawant, who's also joining us from the Kiev region. Gaurav, we're seeing that Kiev suburbs currently is facing threat. Russian onslaught could begin in the next 3 to 4 days. Those are claims made by Ukraine. What's behind you? Show us the atmosphere. Give us a sense of what Kiev is looking like on day 43.
So, Nabila, right now we are in front of the Kiev Military Academy, and this is where soldiers are trained. I'll ask camera person Lalit Joshi to walk along with us as we show you details of what's happening in Kiev today. The situation is slowly coming towards normal in Kiev. But there is apprehension, so much so that the administration has asked people not to return to Kiev just now. Look around. This is the military academy. This is the main road. This is the main access actually to Kiev. You see a lot of police vehicles moving around. You do see some civilian movement. These two ladies are now walking. Less apprehension than earlier. But as people come back to the streets, those who are in Lviv or those who are outside this country, they are being advised not to come back to Kiev just as yet. And that's an advisory that's gone out. Air raid sirens occasionally, not frequently anymore. But even on mobiles, you get SMSs saying, between 12 and 2, you need to be careful. There could be a situation and you should know where is the nearest bunker. So that is what is happening in Kiev right now. The neighboring areas we've been visiting every day. We've been, India Today is the first channel to be reporting from Bucha, from Irpin, from Hostomel, where 11 bodies were recovered from a garage just today. Now, these are areas that are completely devastated. Not a single building stands in these areas. And this is the apprehension. What's happened here has already happened in parts in Kharkiv and Mariupol. Could happen in other parts of Ukraine in the days and weeks ahead, because the information here is that Russia's operations are only likely to intensify in the days and weeks ahead. Nabila.
Gaurav, stay with us. Cutting across to Rajesh. Rajesh, you were showing us, give us an understanding what's behind you. Where are you and how's the situation there? Do civilians still have hope on day 43 that they can stay back in that war-torn country? Because of the kind of casualties that we've seen in areas like Bucha and Bordianka, it's dreadful to even imagine what's going through the minds of those locals who have decided to stay back.
Nabila, you can see a tram there. It's operational. You can see this big yellow bus. That is the government transport, which is the backbone of public transport in Kiev. Everything is operational right now. And this highway you see behind me is Kharkivska highway, which goes towards Kharkiv city. Lots of cars moving on this. Traffic looks like normal. It was in normal days before the war. Almost, I said, not 100%, but yes, people are moving around normally now. There is no fear. There's no panic. People are not nervous like they were in the initial weeks of the war. Things in Kiev are pretty normal. And here people are coming back, people who are on the outskirts of the city, even people from Lviv. Despite of what Gaurav said, that there have been a government advisory, people are coming back to Kiev and now starting with their normal life here. Nabila.
All right, so in that case, Gaurav, it seems like there's some hope among Ukrainians despite 43 days of this Russian onslaught. And kudos to their courage and their grit for them to stay back to fight for their country. Many of them are returning, which means things look better in the area of Kiev. But there are areas like, for example, Popasna, where we hear rocket launchers, aircraft strikes, and civilians being quickly evacuated from those areas because that's been bombarded. Give us an understanding, what are the key zones right now in Ukraine that's still facing Russian onslaught?
So the fact remains, now people are far more confident that they will be able to take on the Russian assault. Earlier it was fear that made close to 4 million people leave this country and internally displace about 10 million people in Ukraine. So yes, some of the men are coming back. Yes, some women are also coming back. But the advisory is not to return to Kiev in larger numbers, because the apprehension is what's happening in some other parts of Ukraine may happen in Kiev once again. And we've already seen what's happened at Irpin, Bucha and Hostomel. So the areas that are seeing conflict right now are Donetsk and Luhansk. That's towards the east. That's the Donbas region. In Donbas region, especially in Mariupol, where there are reports of intense fighting. There are reports of fighting around Kherson. Odessa could be in the line of fire, is what is being said. The Sea of Azov has been cut off. There are attacks from the Black Sea, which is the Russian Black Sea fleet is targeting coastal Ukraine, and there is information that the coastal battery of the Ukrainian armed forces, they have hit back at the Russian Navy. Now, Ukraine is also desperately looking for more offensive weapons to take this war forward. So far, they were getting the ATGMs and the SAMs, which were man-portable, shoulder-fired defensive weapons to take on the adversary once the adversary was in Ukraine's territory. But Ukraine's President Zelensky and the Foreign Minister Kuleba, they are seeking more offensive weapons to take the battle into the Donbas region, into Donetsk and Luhansk, that are controlled while they are independent countries according to Russia, but controlled by the Russian armed forces. So that's where they want to take the offensive into their camp. And a lot of soldiers who were earlier deployed here in Kiev, they are now being relocated to the east to fight in Kharkiv, to fight in Mariupol, and to fight in Donetsk and Luhansk. Nabila.
I'm going to cut across to Rajesh. Rajesh, if you can give us an understanding, what countries are helping Ukraine how? What's coming in the form of military aid? Is Ukraine fit enough to fight the onslaught that continues from the Russian side for 43 days and counting? We know that they're trying their best to gather global support, and there's enough condemnation to what Russia is doing. But is there any more material aid given out to Ukraine?
Look, Nabila, countries, the Baltic republics, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, and Poland have been the biggest vocal supporters of Ukraine in this war, and they are pushing for more aid should come to Ukraine, military aid. They have been pushing Germany to give more military aid. Bulgaria has agreed to give some Soviet-era tanks to Ukraine. Czech Republic has already given that. But let me also tell you, there is a lot of opposition in Bulgaria about giving any kind of military aid to Ukraine. And there have been huge demonstrations in Sofia, the capital of Bulgaria, for giving any kind of aid to Ukraine. Besides this, another neighbor of Ukraine is Hungary. where the new freshly elected president in his fourth term, Viktor, has proposed a peace talk between the two countries in Budapest. Let me tell you, Hungary is facing a lot of flack from the European Union countries for supporting Russia and agreeing to buy oil from Russia in rubles. So a lot of political activities going on in Europe right now. Finland and Sweden are likely to join NATO. And let me tell you, Russia invaded Ukraine because Ukraine wanted to join NATO. And now Finland, who has a common boundary with Russia, is saying they will join NATO, which will again be a red line for Russia and may escalate this war to a new level. Nabila.
You know, Rajesh, we also have Geeta joining us from Donetsk. Remember, India Today's team of reporters are on ground, bearing those hostilities along those combat zones, bringing us the details on ground, factual details. Geeta, thank you for joining us. Good to see you safe. Geeta, we see that Russia has been continuing this onslaught, day 43. But we know at the same time that the entire Western region, the United States, many parts of the globe have imposed hectic sanctions on Russia. At a time like this, Russia also needs the kind of money, they need some money to continue this war a little further. Do you believe that Russia has the capacity to go on in the weeks counting? Ukraine, of course, has been battered, but does Russia have the might enough and has the money enough now to continue?
Well, Russia is feeling the squeeze when it comes to the sanctions. They're very harsh. The biggest pinch that Russia is feeling is to do with their own reserves. Now, a freeze on that is certainly something that is going to hit Russia hard. But this is a tactical, strategic decision that Russia has taken. And with NATO not entering Ukraine, it doesn't seem like the entire war is going to escalate beyond Ukraine and Russia. Will Ukraine be able to sustain itself is the larger question over here, with so many parts of eastern Ukraine now taken and under the control of Russia. Even if there are negotiations and there are more sanctions, will Russia and Donetsk and Luhansk give up on the areas that they are now under control of? And also remember, in Europe, like Rajesh was saying, there are countries that are now contemplating and looking at whether if they should continue imposing these sanctions. This even as there is going to be a United Nations General Assembly debate today evening in India, early morning around 10 o'clock in New York, where a debate is taking place to suspend Russia's membership of the United Nations Human Rights Council. It does not seem like it could go through in terms of the numbers and whether if the country, important P5 members such as Russia and China are going to ensure that this does not really go through. But a debate certainly is taking place. So that's a very important development coming in from New York, from the United Nations.
You know, Geeta, if you could give us a sense of what's behind you. Donetsk is also one of those regions which has been heavily bombarded by Russian forces. But in the latest, we hear that Ukrainian forces has managed to attack a Russian camp in Donetsk.
Well, that's right. Right now, we are in the city because this is where we get connectivity and network, yeah. Nabila. So there isn't much to show over here. But the moment we leave Donetsk city, the kind of fierce fighting that is underway across the whole of south, east and north of Donetsk and south of Luhansk. So massive fight, Ukrainians trying to take back claimed territories by the Russian side. But at this point in time, it seems like Russia is keeping a strong hold on the areas that have already been taken. And Donetsk is feeling the heat of wartime. There is no water supply or very little water supply. So we are all being very economical with our water. There is no heating. And certainly the gas, while it is on and electricity is on, these are difficult times and everything is being rationed out. So it is very difficult to even be living here in Donetsk and surviving.
All right, I'm cutting across to Gaurav, who's currently in the capital city of Kiev. Gaurav, give us an understanding. What does Russia want? 43 days and counting. You're in the capital city of Kiev, which makes the decisions for Ukraine. What is Russia looking at to end this war? We know Ukrainian side. What does Russia want? Give us an understanding on what are their demands.
You know, Russia's made one thing very clear. Their aim is to take the Donbass region. They'd started with this offensive in 2014 when they'd taken Crimea. They'd taken parts of Donetsk and Luhansk. And Ukraine has constantly claimed that it's anti-terrorist operations, as they call it. They've been on in that area since 2014. In 2022, Russia started off with two aims as articulated by President Putin before the start of this conflict on the 24th of February. A regime change in Kiev that they haven't succeeded in, and demilitarization of Ukraine. The second aim also not met yet. The third part is the consolidation of Russian presence in the Donbass region. You know, when we were reporting from ground zero in Mariupol completely was in control of the Ukrainian forces, and we went all the way up to the point where the Ukrainian army was in control of a territory till the buffer point. You know, Rajesh and I went up to the Sea of Azov while we were reporting from Mariupol before the onset of hostilities. That situation has changed. The Russians are now in control of the Sea of Azov. They're in control of major parts of Mariupol. There remain pockets of resistance, and the apprehension is that the Russians are not permitting, or at least that is what is being said here in Kiev, that the Russians are not permitting the humanitarian corridor and the exit of civilians and non-combatants from Mariupol. That is the troubling aspect. We were also reporting from Kharkiv before the onset of these hostilities, and again in Kharkiv it's virtually been flattened to the ground. The situation is extremely grim, and the apprehension is that the Russians will mount a massive operation and take civilians hostage the way they did in Irpin, Bucha and Hostomel. So that is why the government here has asked people to evacuate from Mariupol and Kharkiv and such areas as quickly as possible. The apprehension is increased hostilities towards the south and the east, and the cutting off of a part of this country as part of Russia's operations in 2022.
All right. In that case, from the analysis that I get from all of you, doesn't seem like Russia is going to end this war anytime soon, as Ukraine has no intention to buckle under pressure. 43 days and counting. India Today's team of reporters, Gaurav Sawant, Rajesh Pawar and Geeta Mohan, bringing us a lot more factual details from those combat zones. Thank you very much. Please stay safe. I'm going to come back to you for more on that. Meanwhile, Russia continues to step up its offensive on Ukraine. De-escalation by Russia in the central and western parts of Ukraine is being matched with corresponding escalation in southern and eastern parts of the country. Attacks are now being mounted from land as well as the Black Sea. Under its phase 2 of this military operations, Russia has now intensified its attacks, taking out the deadliest weapons from its arsenal. Could this really signal the next level of escalation? Here's more on that.
Caliber cruise missiles lift off from a small Russian Navy ship in the Black Sea, aimed at 7 different targets in southern Ukraine. A Russian Su-35 air superiority fighter taking off and conducting a strike mission on an undisclosed target inside Ukraine. A Russian anti-air system launching and hitting what is claimed to be a Ukrainian Bayraktar drone, an unmanned system that has been giving hell to Russian vehicles in the weeks gone by. And these latest images of Russian Onyx supersonic cruise missile being launched at Ukrainian targets in the eastern part of the country. The de-escalation by Russia in the central and western parts of Ukraine are being matched with corresponding escalation in the southern and eastern parts of the country, borne out by an unending stream of footage of the targeted attacks.
The domination of eastern Ukraine will require sustained escalation in this part of the country. And that's what we're witnessing as we travel through the Donbass region.
The Russian forces are regrouping with attacks from land and from sea. The southern part has become the prime target in the second phase of war.
In the airspace above Ukraine, Russia continues to be challenged formidably by Ukraine's weapons. This is a Russian Su-35 air superiority fighter that was shot down using NATO weaponry earlier this week. The pilot now in Ukrainian captivity. But could Russia be planning to deploy its stealth fighter, the Su-57, to conduct strike missions in Ukraine? The Su-57 is the 5th generation fighter built to remain barely visible to radar and other sensors, and could trump Ukraine's air defenses or at least make life more difficult for them. A citizen's video in the early days of the war was believed to be Su-57 on a test bombing mission over the city of Zhytomyr west of Kiev, though this advanced aircraft type definitely hasn't been deployed in any real numbers. With Putin narrowing his attacks to the southern and eastern parts of Ukraine, the strength of Russia's military could become more concentrated. With thousands of square kilometers of Ukraine already laid to waste, could what come next be Putin's most decisive escalation? With Mausami Singh in southern Ukraine and Geeta Mohan in eastern Ukraine, Bureau Report, India Today.
Now, days after the first lot of civilian dead bodies were found in Bucha, Ukrainian forces continue to locate a lot more in the 5 days since Ukraine reclaimed Bucha. Death of more than 300 civilians has been confirmed. India Today's Gaurav Sawant was the first Indian journalist to report from Bucha. He's now returned to Kiev suburb. The West is, of course, accusing Russia of war crimes in Bucha, while Moscow in turn claims Ukraine has staged this massacre.
Pope Francis kissed a battered Ukraine flag brought from Bucha to drive home the shock and agony of the world at the mass killings in this little town on the outskirts of Kiev.
Dopo la Seconda Guerra Mondiale,
after World War II, an attempt was made to lay the foundations for a new history of peace. But unfortunately, we are not learning. The old story of competing great powers has continued, and in the current war in Ukraine, we are witnessing the impotence of United Nations.
Even as Bucha coped with the brutality unleashed on its people, more bodies surfaced as special forces of the Ukrainian army sanitized every lane of the suburban city.
There is some activity that is going on there. There is some suspect that seems to have been spotted. That area, there are Ukraine army personnel who are deployed here. We've been asked to stay back as these personnel keep an eye on activities that are going on in Bucha. Remember, Bucha is being sanitized. Every lane of Bucha is currently being sanitized. This is the heart of Bucha, and the special forces are here. And they're clearing they're clearing this area. They're clearing every area right now, going from lane to lane, clearing areas. There was some suspicious activity that was noticed, and that is why they're sanitizing this area before they leave. Now, everyone who's got here, their background is checked, and only once their antecedents have been verified are they cleared to move forward, or they're detained. In Bucha, it is still feared that there are some pockets where there could be either some spies, soldiers or fighters who could still be hiding, and that is why this clearance operation is currently underway.
Ukraine claims more than 300 civilians were brutally killed in Bucha by Russian forces. Moscow claims its army had no hand in the killings, as Russian troops had left Bucha days before the bodies were found.
What's extremely significant is President Zelensky of Ukraine has sought international assistance to carry out an independent investigation. Forensic investigators have been sought from several countries to come to Bucha and gather information and intelligence and evidence against Russia for alleged war crimes. According to the government in Ukraine, it's the 64th Motorized Division that had its brigades here in Bucha, and international investigations are actually going door to door. One, gathering information in terms of evidence that people may want to give, also video evidence, and two, when postmortems are carried out, evidence is being gathered of crimes against women, crimes against innocents in terms of their hands being tied behind their backs before they were shot dead. All of that evidence is being gathered, and teams of doctors are also going to help people. For example, this is the ICRC, the International Committee of the Red Cross, that's also going to provide medicines and other assistance that people may require. In Bucha, on day 42 of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, With cameraman Lalit Mohan Joshi, Gaurav Sawant for India Today.
Now, while parents are fighting for their motherland at the war front, we're looking at some teenagers who are also standing by them in an attempt to help the army. In Odessa, some teenagers have created a check post and are currently guarding it with their toy guns. Teenagers say that they also want to help Ukrainian army themselves. Here's Moshmi Singh bringing us this report from the town of Odessa that's currently being bombarded.
On our way on the outskirts of Odessa, we hit this barricade and which was manned by these two youngsters, Ivan and Maxim. You can see both of them holding their toy guns. Yes, those are toy guns, but they have prepared this check post by themselves. In fact, they wanted to do it, and in participation with the civil defense here, they have prepared this entire check post. So you see, they're wearing a uniform synchronized with the jackets and sweatshirts. And here they've built tires, put tires on the road. Here there is a manual checking that's happening on this entire site. Barricades and even all this done by you all? All the children?
Это была моя идея построить этот блокпост. Мы гуляли с моими друзьями, нам стало скучно. Мы увидели в интернете, что
Ivan is talking about the way he's created this entire thing. What did he say, Olga?
Ivan has told that it was his own idea. When war started, they saw our army, they saw everything in the network, and they have decided that they need to help our army as they can. Their children, they made it themselves. They asked, of course, adults helped them with everything to construct this, but the idea was child's.
Their idea, and
And also, they want to do something to help our army.
So here we have sir from the civil defense. Can we have a word with him? Yes, sure. Children, sir, are very active and energetic.
Оружие. Да, и они с утра идут в школу, учатся, потом приходят сюда.
Importantly, a big message. Olga, what did sir say?
He said that people in Ukraine, before this war, there were a lot of nationalities who lived in Ukraine in peace. But when war starts, all these people of different nationalities, in Odessa region there are more than 200 nationalities, different nationalities, and they became one nation, yes. People gathered together. They are ready to help each other. They are ready to protect our earth. Because people want to be independent. Ukraine wants to be an independent country. It was before Russian aggression. And even these children, they understand that this is important. It's like a game for them. Yes, it's like a game, but they love their homeland.
Батько наш Бандера, Україна мати, ми за Україну підем воювати. Батько наш Бандера, Україна мати, ми за Україну підем воювати. Героям слава!
Слава нации!
Смерть ворогам!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Truly, this is a undying spirit of Ukraine, relentless. And, even as we talk, these are cold winds, cold winds are blowing. Come on, Ivan, show us your bunker. So we'll take a look at Ivan's bunker created by children at this children's checkpost. We are in this bunker that has been created by Ivan and Maxim, and this is no child's play because these children are a part of the civil defense team, and that's why you can see that bunkers like these are a common scene in the suburbs and outskirts of the city. These bunkers have been prepared by Ivan, Maxim and his family members. You can see tires here, sacks here. In this, medicine kit has been kept with all the necessary medicines. Here for a long haul, you can see bread, toast, biscuits, water, and all preparations made. Here you have a blanket, minimum means of survival, but this is a matter of a fight for existence, and that's one reason that why the Russian army is facing such a stiff challenge, because the Ukrainians refuse to bow down, refuse to kneel down in front of the Russian aggression, and in fact it is their strong spirit that prevails in the entire stretch with the army. With video journalist Parminder Sharma, this is Mosmi Singh in Odessa for India Today.
Now, with the heart-wrenching images and stories that come from the war-torn country of Ukraine, here's a heartwarming story of a baby born during war while the country battles attacks by Russia. The brave mother of the infant appeals for peace. India Today's Mosmi Singh with more on that.
India Today is getting you the untold stories, stories that are heartwarming, stories that are touching, and stories that are heart-wrenching. One of these stories was unfolding in Mykolaiv, which was bombed on the 10th, bombed on the 12th, and what you see in the arms of Anna is a baby of war.
Пусть Россия уходит, просто уходит к себе домой. Мы хотим просто жить, спокойно жить, без них. Нам и так хорошо уже.
ये बहादुर माँ रशियन में बोलते हुए रशिया को यूक्रेन से जाने के लिए बोल रही है.
За нашу свободу і покажем, що ми браття козацького роду.
Но я после инсульта я плохо разговариваю. Но хочу сказать, что
she was born in Russia, Ural, and when she came to Ukraine, to her son at first, nobody told anything, and she lived all her life. There were not problems between people because of Russian or Ukrainian. Nobody forbidden to talk in Russian. So, because people like to work here. People like peace. People want to live in peace.
Now, after the horrors seen in the town of Ukraine's Bucha, a person